thank our two authors, Laura and Margaret. Kat will introduce them and speak to them, and they will speak to us in just a few minutes. But I did want to welcome you, and as well, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Friends. We're always looking for new members. Currently, we do have about 112, I think, Kat, isn't it? Or is it even more? Oh, it's even above 112. So we have a very good representation here from our community, but we're always looking for more. And we do have a membership drive going on right now, so if you'd like to sign up and become a member, that would be wonderful. We can certainly do that for you today. And when you become a member, if you become a member today, you get a free raffle ticket to win a Kindle, an electronic reader. So do please consider, we have a lot of fun events like this, and truly, this was a fun event. I hope you're all enjoying it as much as we enjoyed putting it on for you. The Friends, thank you. The Friends is a 501(c) organization, which basically we're a non-profit. What we do and what our mission statement is to promote literacy and the gifting of books. Speaking of the gifting of books, right to the left of the entrance, or the door if you go out, we do have our Friends bookstore. Please do stop by and take a look at some of our books. The circulation changes continuously. So we greatly promote our bookstore amongst our community. And as far as promoting literacy, well, what we do is support all of the phenomenal programs that this library puts on. Our library manager, John Alford, who will be up shortly, and our children's librarian, Amanda Kane, have the most phenomenal programs. These programs can cost some money. And so that's what the Friends do. We write out checks to John. No. We put on fundraisers such as this to obtain funds so that he can put these programs on for the community. And they're very well attended and very well supported, so we're so appreciative. With that, I am going to turn the microphone over, because it's enough of me. I'm going to turn the microphone over to John Alford. He's going to talk a little bit about the library. He says no, but he will. And tell us about some of the programs. And thank you so much again. And then after John, we'll have Kat come up and kick it off with our wonderful authors. So thank you.
I really wanted Jay to say I don't like public speaking very much. I only have 3 quick things for you. I wanted to start off with a joke, though. You guys want to hear a librarian joke? Why did the librarian slip and fall on the library floor?
I don't know, why?
Because he was in the non-friction section. Thank you so much for laughing at that. My coworkers were like, don't do that, John. Don't do that.
Keep your day job.
I have to say thank you to all of you. We do amazing programs, but they would not happen if not for the Friends group. I think we would have a couple story times a week, and that's about it. So everything you see in here, the drums, the Dr. Seuss birthday, the big crowds, that is all the Friends. So thank you.
So
please join us. And that is about all I have to say. I do have 2 secrets to share, if you're interested. One, some of you already know this is not a big secret, we're becoming a homework center. We're buying lots of furniture, we're moving a lot of furniture, we're getting more computers. Things are going to get really busy in there. Second secret is we're becoming a family flex library. That means more money from the county, more programs from the county. So we're going to get even busier after that.
Oh, we need more friends.
So I hope Jane and Pat keep writing all those wonderful checks. And that, I think, is all I have for you today. So thank you again for coming. It's wonderful to have you all show up.
Hi, did you enjoy your lunch?
Yay!
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Here's a little history of high tea. The British tradition of high tea began in the mid-1700s as an afternoon meal, usually served between 3 and 4 o'clock. So, it's 3 o'clock somewhere, right? Initially, it was a meal for the working man, standing up or sitting on tall stools, thus high. Tea with cakes, scones, even cheese on toast would have been served. And gradually, this afternoon meal became more known as an important event on the social calendars of ladies and gentlemen, rather than a meal for the working man. For the leisure classes, high tea served a practical purpose, allowing ladies and gentlemen the opportunity of a substantial meal before attending the theater or playing cards. It might be a long time before evening supper could be taken. It was around this time that one John Montague, the 4th Earl of Sandwich, see where I'm going with this? Had the idea of placing meat and other fillings between 2 slices of bread. You know, I find that hard to believe, actually. I'm sure that if he was the Earl of Sandwich, there was somebody down beneath in the kitchen there. I don't think he did it.
Plus he's a man.
So the high tea sandwich was created, and courtesy of the British Empire, the tradition of high tea spread across the globe, arriving at Acton, Agua, Dulce Library, where it will become a tradition with your ongoing support. The romance genre. Romance fiction is smart, fresh, and diverse. Whether you enjoy contemporary dialogue, historical settings, mystery, thrillers, or any number of other things, there's a romance novel waiting for you. 2 basic elements comprise every romance novel: a central love story and an emotionally satisfying and optimistic ending. Romance novels may have any tone or style, be set in any place or time, and have varying levels of sensuality, ranging from sweet to extremely hot. These settings and distinctions of plot create specific subgenres with romance fiction. There's contemporary romance, erotic romance, historical romance, inspirational, paranormal, romantic, and young adult romance. I'd like to introduce Laura. Laura T. Emery has lived most of her life in Los Angeles, California, but spent most of her time and energy the past few years perusing the streets of Florence through literature, art, and Google Apps. Laura is learning the Italian language simply to enable her to read the few books that exist on Simonetta Vespucci and the many other documents of the Italian Renaissance that have yet to be translated into English. She made several research trips to Florence in order to become fully immersed in the history and culture, hoping to one day retire with a husband in the Tuscany region of Italy. Laura T. Emery.
Thank Kat Fandino and Jane and Lee Jennings, I think it's under somewhere, for having me here today. This is very exciting. Can everybody hear me? Yes. I have a tendency to be a quiet talker, so let me know. Raise your hand. So I'm Laura T. Emery. I have 2 published romance novels, Disposition of Remains and What Remains of the Fair Simonetta. I'm here to talk a bit about the writing process, which is different for each author, but here's mine and how it developed. I am a voracious reader, so I started a sort of 2-person book club with a friend of mine at work. And we just kind of exchanged stories that we liked. And one day I said, you know, I could do this. So I wrote a whole chapter in one sitting, and I handed it to her, and she said, well, this is a lot of fun, you should keep going. And basically that's how I became a writer, and ever since then I haven't been able to stop. Almost like a sickness. So I didn't have an outline, just a beginning, an idea for a big twist, and an end. For me, I think a key ingredient to being a writer is having a sort of wandering, twisted mind. And so one day I'm driving to Vegas with my husband, and I started thinking about if somebody committed a crime in this day and age, you know, how would you hide? You wouldn't be able to have, you know, a cell phone, a credit card, anything like that. And I sort of turned that person into an unhappy housewife in a controlling marriage who just found out she's going to die. I realize this is a bit of a morbid subject. I've been a registered nurse for 17 years, and unfortunately in my career I see a lot of death. It makes you think about death a little more than a normal person should. And I started thinking about my own mortality, and I thought it would be fun to write a book about really enjoying life. So it's a lot more lighthearted than I'm making it sound. And of course, it wouldn't be romance if my character didn't find love along the way. I based my main character, Stacia, on 3 different people I met during my nursing career. The first and foremost was a really sassy coworker, and the other 2 were 2 memorable patients I took care of during my nursing career. And without giving too much away, one was in oncology in the cancer unit, and the other one was on postpartum, where the moms and babies are. So I put myself into this situation. I find out I'm going to die. What do I do first? So I figured I would want to see all the people that had made a huge impact on my life, like my first love. And I wrote that part of the story much differently than I'd originally intended. Just as I was writing it, it just kind of came out the way it did. Speaking of love brings me to how I chose my character names. When I was young, I had a brother. My brother had a friend named Stana. And I always thought it was such a strange name for a woman to be named Stana. So he told me one day that her name was actually Anastasia, and she hated it. So I'm like 12 years old at the time. I think it's the coolest thing ever. And I thought, well, why didn't she just call herself Stacia? That's what I would do. So I was already sort of intrigued by the name. And a lot of the character's development happened around the fact that her name was Anastasia and she didn't like it. Such as her Russian father naming her after the Royal Duchess Anastasia Romanov, even though she's half Native American and ended up looking more like Pocahontas. For her love interest, I wanted him to be a hot guy with a dated name. I have no idea why still, but my favorite older man was my Uncle Wilbur, so that's the name I went with. For her first love, even though the character became another amalgam of men that I've met over the years, he got the name of my first love. And when I was obsessed with him, I should say, his name was Mike. I'm also 15 years old at the time. But as he got older and more mature, he was suddenly Michael one day. So my character in my book is Michael. And though it would probably not surprise him to find out he's in my book, he actually has no idea as far as I know. So as I wrote about Stacia, she developed this sort of complex childhood, a mother who died young, an absentee father, and I found that I started to know her like I knew a friend. And along with her developed this complicated plot involving her Native American heritage, her love for Botticelli, and her need to complete a bucket list. And then I got the idea of molding her journey into the psychologist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of grieving. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And for Stacia, she got an added stage of deliverance. So I wrote the first draft in 4 months, sort of word vomit style. And I gave it to a couple friends who said, yeah, it's good, with no real ideas for changes, because that's what friends do. Then I figured, since it's mostly, I figured it was a story for women, it's about a woman, it was a romance that attracts a mostly female audience. So I thought a man might be the best critic. So I gave it to my brother, who's a screenwriter, and he gave me extremely detailed, helpful notes that took me a year and a half to go through, rewriting and editing to actually make it good. So after that, I needed a title, which I agonized over quite a bit. I asked a bunch of opinions and ultimately ignored them all. Some people told me to go with something in the title that would link it to something already popular, since I was an unknown author. You know, put something gray in the title and maybe people will come across it. But I felt I had integrity and the need to be forever poor. So I wanted something original. And I came up with the name Disposition of Remains. And again, it makes it sound far more menacing than the book really is, but I couldn't make myself change it. A nurse's job immediately after someone expires is to have the family member fill out a form called a Disposition of Remains. This can pose a really big problem if the person died and did not make their wishes known. So for my character Stacia, it was a very important detail. I opted to self-publish, which meant I needed a cover. Yay, how fun is that? Except on the back of the cover, there's a synopsis. That is not so fun. Taking something that took 2 years to write and cramming it into a few sentences. I don't know about Margaret, but I don't know another author who likes to do this. But once I came up with a dreaded synopsis, then I was able to make a cover. So the concept from the cover comes from 2 things. Stacia's love for Botticelli's Birth of Venus, which I have brought over here. This is just a blown-up version of Venus, and this is Botticelli's Birth of Venus on the far left over there. And also from the prologue of the book, which reads, I am dust, particles in a shiny urn, but I'm not alone in here. There are a few fragments left over from the previous inhabitants of the ferocious incinerator. I don't mind, it's nice having some company. I picked out the urn myself, while all of my particles were still assembled as a whole. I wanted the smallest, most inconspicuous one possible, one step up from a coffee can. I do not want to be a cumbersome nuisance, as I plan to travel a great distance. Do not weep for me, as I am not sad. I am dead now, which is all right, because unlike most of the unfortunate inhabitants of this earth, I have lived. So I went onto eBay and I bought a small urn, which I have here today. I don't know if you all can see in the back. It's kind of strange, but this is like one of my favorite things I have in my house. And I'm hoping to be buried in it someday if I lose first. And then also, so once I bought the urn, I put it in front of this painting here, put a red drape and took a picture of it and turned it into a cover. So this is my original cover here. This is not a practice I would recommend. Later on, I had a graphic designer sort of give it a facelift, but it still has the same concept as the original cover. So I published it in paperback and Kindle and also in audiobook format and got a professional review from Kirkus. And fortunately, they really liked the book, which really helped me as an unknown author. I hadn't intended to write a sequel, but when I was in Florence a few years ago, I saw this odd painting in the Gallery of Palatina called the Fair Simonetta. Simonetta Vespucci is a name that maybe many of you aren't familiar with, but you would probably recognize her face since it's in almost all of Botticelli's paintings. So this is Simonetta here. This was actually painted 9 years after she died. And this is also Simonetta here. This is called the Madonna of the Magnificat. And there's Madonna of the Pomegranate. She's there also. And she was known for being a renowned beauty of her time. But then there's this painting. Hopefully you can see in the back. This is called the Fair Simonetta. And she's looking kind of homely and frumpy here. And there's really no explanation of where this painting came from or who commissioned it. And I thought I wanted to tell the story behind this painting. It's just so odd. And unfortunately, they don't make copies of it because it's not as popular as the other ones. So that's why I had to bring my little copy. So not only did I wanted to tell the story of how that painting came to be, but I had this idea of having this sassy modern woman who dreamed of one day becoming the renowned Renaissance beauty actually get her wish. So I had a title before I even wrote a single word. Obviously, the Fair Simonetta comes from the painting, and the What Remains title to the first book. Choosing character names for the second book was not an issue, since most people were real. Leonardo da Vinci, Botticelli, and Lorenzo de' Medici, and of course, Simonetta. I really only had to name a few. Antonella was an adorable tour guide I had when I was in Italy, and I have a character named Luciana, who got her name because to me it sounded like the Italian version of Lucifer, and she's not very nice. So up until this point, I had not met a single other author, but I started to get invited to some local author events about halfway through writing the second book. From there, I met someone who asked me to join the writer's group, and this made a huge difference to my writing process. It then became, spit out a chapter, go over it again and make it readable, go back again and make it enjoyable. Then I read it aloud to my family, who's not very fond of this practice, before I bring it to my writer's group, where each member gives their take on it. Some of them will correct grammar and punctuation, some of them will give point of view advice, but some of them, the most helpful things is just giving, sort of story advice. And so the father of Botticelli, his name is Mariano Filippetti, was a Renaissance tanner. And in my book, I have Mariano strolling down the street with several cowhide on his back, until one of my other writer friends told me that he would have to be Hercules. I had a lot of fun with Stacia, being a modern woman in the 14th century, trying to figure out what's going on, while living her fantasy existence, and as the object of Botticelli's affection. So after the book was done, I gave it to as many beta readers as I could, other writers who read through the story quickly to see if it's enjoyable and makes sense as a whole. For the cover, I came across this anecdote about Simonetta Vespucci dancing at a ball as one of the three graces. Botticelli happens to have this little painting called the Primavera, and again, I'm sorry, it's very small, that probably many of you have seen without even realizing. And I decided at this ball, Simonetta Vespucci is here, And here's Mercury. I cut him off accidentally. But I decided to write this scene and have Botticelli dressed as Mercury. So later then he would have painted himself. So on the cover, I have the three Graces and Mercury. And then on the back, I thought it might be kind of fun, since these are historical features who've been painted by Botticelli for the most part. I included all of their portraits. And a couple of these, one of these is Leonardo da Vinci's self-portrait. So right now, I'm working on a third novel in the series, which is going to be The Remains of Something Yet Undecided. I think I've changed the title about 10 times and just decided to write the darn thing and worry about the title later. It's going to be set in Havasupai with the Native American tribe at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And I have a research trip planned this summer, which I'm very excited about. Has anybody here been to Havasupai? I'll have to come chat with you later, because I'm very excited. I actually wrote in a small part into the first book and had not been there. So even though I haven't quite figured out a title, I do have a concept for the cover. And here it is. So for those of you who haven't been here, this is the Havasu waterfalls, which are this great blue color. And I kind of wanted to turn this into an old painting and put it in a frame with, of course, my trusty urn on the front. So now, I just have to finish the book. I'm really excited about this one. Sometimes I find myself typing really fast just so I can find out what's going to happen next, because this has been my least planned book so far, but I'm having a great time with it. The only difference now in my process is that I do have a critique partner that I exchange more in-depth notes with, in addition to all of the other error, stupidity safeguards I already have in place. Though I don't outline, I do make notes to myself on napkins, receipts, incomprehensible little pieces of paper next to my nightstand. And I type them directly into my document for future reference, because I always say, oh, I have to remember that, and then I totally don't, so I always write things down. I write short chapters because when I read, I like to feel like I've accomplished something. So when I write a chapter, I want to write something that somebody could finish in a very short period of time. If I find myself in some sort of writer's block situation, I write a pivotal scene, which usually is a love scene. With the second book, I found myself in the middle of a chapter and couldn't quite figure out where I was going, and just sort of veered off into some sex. And then I realized at some point I had started the chapter in a church. So that all had to be reworked, but it all made it into the final draft with just a change of venue. I find inspiration really everywhere. I have so many books in my head that sometimes it frustrates me that it's such a slow process for me. It's taken me about 2 years for each book. But my goal is to write things that are lighthearted, easy to read, while hopefully sharing some interesting facts. I hear there are some aspiring authors here today. Maybe? Well, if you are, I'd really like to encourage you to pursue writing. Some advice I would give you is find other writers of the same genre and write every day, even if it's just a paragraph, even if it's a really bad paragraph. It really keeps you in the groove of writing. And find as many people to look at your work as possible. If you're anything like me, I will look at the same error 1,000 times and never see it. Your mind just sort of fills in what you want to say, but another person will find it in about 30 seconds, chances are. Writers are really a unique group of amazing people that really look out for and encourage each other, and we always welcome one of the team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you very much. Margaret Brownlee. Thrills, mystery, suspense, romance. Margaret penned it all. Nothing wrong with this, except Margaret happened to be writing for the church newsletter. After making the church picnic read like a Grisham novel, her former pastor took her aside and said, maybe God's calling you to write fiction. Margaret wasn't sure if that was true, but she wasn't about to take chances. She now has more than 30 books to her credit. Not bad for someone who failed 8th grade English. Just don't ask her to diagram a sentence. Happily married to her real-life hero, Margaret and her children, Margaret and her husband live in Southern California. Margaret Brownlee.
thank you so much for inviting me to this beautiful, beautiful tea. I love it. I was actually born in London, England, so I kind of always like to go back to my roots, and I love, this is great. Anyway, yes, I've always wanted to be a writer. Actually, I wrote my first book in 5th grade. It was a mystery I didn't know how to end, and still don't. But anyway, I just always wanted to be a writer, but as I honestly did in my 8th grade, flunked English, my 8th grade English, and the teacher said, how can you be a writer if you can't even diagram a sentence? Well, that was very discouraging to me, and so I kind of, thought, well, maybe that's not where I'm meant to be. But I kept writing through high school. I entered the 17 magazine contest every single year. I wrote this, heart-rending stories every year. I never even got an honorable mention. And then I went to college, then got married and had children, and I was a teacher, and so we just kind of put the writing aside. But that bug was always there. So I finally decided, after talking to my minister and causing him problems with his newsletter, I finally decided, okay, this is it. I'm going to do what I've always wanted to do. So I announced this to my family, and my children were delighted because it seemed that my long letters to their teachers explaining why they were absent were an embarrassment to them. I thought they were funny and humorous, but anyway, the kids did agree. So everybody was very happy about that. So I enrolled in an evening class for creative writing, and I started writing little articles, and pretty soon I got a $5 check in the mail for an article I wrote, and my husband took me out to dinner to celebrate. And a couple months later, I sold another article for, I think, about $7. And again, we went out to dinner to celebrate. By the third such article, my husband said, honey, we can't afford all this success. Anyway, so then I decided, well, what I really wanted to do was write novels. I mean, that's where my heart has always been. So I decided to, to really get serious about this. Well, I had 3 children, of course, and was teaching. So the only way to do this was to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I had a typewriter. Remember those things? Typewriters? Oh, my gosh. Anyway, so 4 o'clock every single morning, I got up and wrote for 2 hours before I had to get everybody up, to school and work and everything. And in 4 years, I wrote 4 novels. Including the world's worst novel, I think. But anyway, and I sent out, I had a real big, huge collection of rejections. Back then it was kind of interesting because we had more than 5 publishers. Now we only have 5 publishers. I don't think you can get hundreds of rejections anymore. But anyway, I collected a lot of rejections. And so I finally sold to, it was called Lynx at the time. And they brought out my first book, and then they went bankrupt. So then I sold another book to another publisher. It was called Second Chance of Love was the line. Before they brought the book out, they went out of business. I sold the book to Harlequin, and my writer friends begged me not to write the contract, not to sign it because they were afraid that I would put Harlequin out of business. So anyway, but I did write, and I wrote 4 books to Harlequin. That's kind of where I really got my start. And so I've been writing for quite a few years. Actually, I have 42 books out. And a lot of people ask me, where do you get your ideas from? And well, of course, I read everything. National Enquirer, the toothpaste, I read everything. And I actually got some really wonderful ideas from the National Enquirer. One time they had this wonderful story about the Avon lady who she goes down the river and sells Avon products to the natives that live in the jungle somewhere. And I thought, wow, can you imagine that? They thought rather than use, make berries and everything, they just got the Avon products and do their wall paint. So I looked up Avon ladies and found out that the first Avon lady was a man. And he traveled across the United States selling makeup to, well, who in the 1800s was wearing makeup? the bordellos, right, to the prostitutes. So anyway, he was going from place to place, and I just thought this was wonderful, and I wrote a whole novel based on that idea, so I thought that was fun. So you get wonderful ideas everywhere, although I've never yet gotten an idea from the toothpaste, but that's all right, I will. My latest series, which is the Undercover Lady series, the idea came from reading a biography about Kate Warney. Kate Warney was a Pinkerton detective, and she was hired by Alan Pinkerton in 1852. And she went in to his office, and he thought she wanted a secretarial job. Well, she soon, got rid of that idea. She wanted to be a detective. I have never been able to find out why. I mean, I don't know if her father was a detective, but if you know anything about the 1800s, for a woman to be a detective back then was really amazing. Well, Alan, being a very smart businessman, he soon realized what an advantage a woman had, because number one, she could become friends to the outlaws' wives or girlfriends. She could go where angels and men feared to tread actually, and she could work undercover, and nobody suspected. So he had a whole department of female detectives in the 1800s. Kate Warney was actually a spy. She spied for him during the Civil War, and she saved President-elect Lincoln's life. There was an assassination planned on his life as he was traveling to Washington, D.C., and they were on the train. She wrapped him up in a stole, she put him in a wheelchair, and she told everybody that was her invalid brother. And that's how she saved his life. These are things you probably don't hear about too often, do you? That's because she was a woman. Anyway, but anyway, so I was just fascinated. I was just fascinated about this whole idea. So I wanted to write a whole series, and I talked to my editor, and they thought that was a grand idea. So then I got to thinking, gosh, how do you solve a crime in the 1800s? You know, there's no computers, there's no cameras, there's no fingerprints. How do you do it? So I read all of 16 of Alan Pinkerton's books. He was a wonderful detective and a terrible writer. But anyway, I read all those books, and I just did it was a lot of research, and a lot of the things that are in the books actually were his methods and how they did actually track down their outlaws. And it's an amazing thing because without having any of the things that we have today, they almost always got their man. And I think that's pretty amazing. So in my particular series, one of them is one of the ladies, the heroines, is working undercover as a Harvey girl. And another one is a mail-order bride. The suspected criminal is put in for a mail-order bride, and she's answered that, so there's kind of lots of little goings on there. And then the other one is she is an undercover lady in a bordello. And much to the hero's, he's attracted to her, but he can't possibly be attracted to one of those ladies. So it was kind of a fun thing to write. But anyway, so that's the series. Right now, I'm working on a new series, which I'm really excited about. The first book comes out in November, and it's called Left at the Altar. But why I'm really excited about this book is something that most people probably don't know. Prior to 1883, the United States had more than 100 time zones. And it didn't really matter when you were traveling across country in a covered wagon, but it sure did matter when you were on a train. More than 100 time zones. And there were many, many battles in the Civil War lost because of the time differences. Washington said, this is when you're going to go to battle. Well, what time did they mean? Did they mean Washington time? Did they mean the state time? Did they mean the town time? And believe it or not, some towns, like one in Kansas, had 7 time zones. And the reason they had so many time zones is because the jewelers were the ones who decided what time. Well, if you had 7 jewelers, guess what? And they all thought they had the right time. So anyway, it was kind of interesting because there were a lot of train accidents because of the time thing. People didn't know what time. The train had their time, the town had their time, the state had their time, and there were many, many train accidents. So anyway, in this particular book that comes out in November, the 2 families, the 2 jewelers' families, they're going to get married, except that he leaves her at the altar. So then they're still going to have 2 time zones, and it posed a great big problem. So it was just a fun book to do, and it was using something that most people haven't thought about. But thank God we only have 3-4 time zones right now, because it was really a problem back then. But those are the ways that we come up with these story ideas. So. It was kind of fun, and I really enjoyed it. Very fortunate. It was a hard journey to become published. It's still hard, I think, and but it was worth it, and I'm loving every minute of it. Anyway, well, thank you so much.
Laura first. What's the allure of romance writing for you?
I guess getting to experience something that you haven't experienced in real life.
Well, for me, it's for me, it's you can write every theme in the whole world, every theme, and deal with it and explore it between the relationship of 2 people that love. And that's what I really love about it. And I also wanted to make a comment about writing historicals. What's so fascinating to me about the 1800s, especially about the 1880s, the 1890s, is exactly what's going on in our country today. It is just fascinating. Think about it. We have all these, the iPhones and all the computer stuff. They had the telegraph and the train coming in. People lost their jobs, just like they lose now. We're worried about losing jobs to robots. Well, they were losing their jobs too. The lamplighter lost his job to the electric lights. The telegraph operators eventually lost their jobs to the telephone. It's just exactly how it is today. And so everything that's going on now, they even had some crazy politics going on back then too, believe it or not. Weather, they talk about global warming. You should go back and look at the weather back then. If you think that's bad, they had heat waves. They thought they were going to have a global something or other going on. Everything that's going on back then is happening today. And this is what gives us hope for the future, because those people survived it. They came up with better ideas to solve the problems, and reading about that will make you feel better about what's going on today.
Here's another.
Oh.
What kind of heroes do you like?
Oh, well, I'm always arguing with my editor about this, because when they have these models, and the models are very, very young looking. And I'm always saying, I want a manly model. I want a manly model. And the one Undercover Bride, we had real big problems with it, because to make him more manly, they put a beard on him. Well, the hero doesn't have a beard in the book, and I pointed this out. So then they took the beard off of him, and then we ended up with this funny chin and I don't know. So then we said, okay, well, we give him the unshaven look, which is supposed to be very. So they put that on there anyway. So we finally got that. But I like the manly type. He's that. But he's the hero's going to bring out that little softness. But I like that manly type.
What about you, Laura?
Oh, you got to tell us about your hero.
Yeah, I guess for me, I end up always writing, of course, the good-looking, sensitive, tough guy. What I'm writing now is a little tougher, probably, than the other ones have been.
Is there somebody that you might model him after?
No, they're totally fictional.
She says. Can you talk about the process you go through to name your characters? Well, you did a little bit about that, yeah. And do you struggle to find a name that you feel suits the characters and their personalities?
You know, I don't at all. I know a lot of writers that have baby name books that they go through and, you know, agonize over, but mine's just like, you know, I had a jerk and I was like, yeah, he's Craig. And I'm sorry if there's anybody named Craig. Yeah, that wasn't really an issue for me. I think that name's usually before I even write them.
Are we talking about names? Is
Yeah,
that what?
yes.
Okay. Well, yes, you know, I write about it in the 1800s, so I always have to go and check to make sure that the name existed back then, number one. And so that too. And I found out something, I used to teach creative writing, and I found out something really fascinating. I found out many people that came to my classes said, well, I'm kind of stuck on my novel, and I'm this, that, and that. And it was usually always around page 50. And I thought, there's got to be a reason why, page 50, and I found the same in my own stuff. It was always around page 50. Well, page 50 is when you start knowing your character. You really start knowing. And I discovered that that's when you know your name is wrong. And so, but sometimes the person, you know, I gave my one hero a kind of a feminine name, but when I got to 50, I realized there was nothing feminine about this woman. And so I needed to change her name, and then after that, the whole story flow thing. So it's a funny little thing, you know, that it's just, it has to be the right name. And so that's my experience.
You talked about your covers, both of you. Did you pick your covers exclusively, or is it with your editor? Or?
Well, my publisher, you know, they have an art director, and they always think they know best, and we fight all the time over it. Usually they send me a thing, and I got to tell them what color the hair is, and what this and that and the other thing. I did send them a picture of the next book, Left at the Altar, because I found a wonderful picture on the internet where the bride, she's on the church steps, and she's got this horrible look on her face, like now what? So I sent that, and they're using that as a cover. But you know, I don't. They always say, well, we know best. But you get to pick yours, right?
I do. Yeah, that is the one good thing about self-publishing is I do have control of what goes out there, and one day if I don't like it, I just upload another one.
Do you let your children read your book?
You know what? Not one of my family members has read my book. And actually, I shouldn't say that. My 13-year-old son is about halfway through it, but it's not entirely child-friendly.
Well, when I wrote for Harlequin, nobody read my books. But these are all clean now. There's all sexual tension, but not the actual.
Would you say they're the sweet romance?
I think you would say they're sweet. There's no bad language. There's no, you know, everything. I've kind of grown out of that other stuff, you know. But yeah, they read it.
When you wrote for Harlequin, did you have to follow certain guidelines?
Yes, they did. They want so much sex, and you got to be the character. The hero has to be the heroine by the 3rd page, and yeah. But it was a very good training. It was terrific training for me. It really was, you know. So anyway,
who are some authors that inspire you, and has it changed since you got to the point you're at now?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, you know, this was strangely enough, when I was a little girl, there used to be a writer who wrote for the Golden Books, Margaret Wise Brown. Do you remember anybody? Well, anyway, I used to look up, my name is Margaret Rose, and so I used to pretend that it was me, Margaret Wise. I never realized I was going to marry a Brown lady. But anyway, Little Women was my inspiration. I was Jo, I pretended she was me, blah, 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 because I wanted to be a writer. And then when I was in school, I didn't just flunk English. I didn't do very good in history either. You know, all those battles, all those dates, you know, forget it. Well, anyway, when I read Gone with the Wind when I was 13, I learned 2 things. I learned what a real man was like with Red. Couldn't realize why she was with this other guy. And number 2, I realized, you know, history is really about people and how they respond to what's going on around them. And that's what that book taught me. And, you know, I did, to be a writer, considering that I flunked English and history, and to be a historical writer, I mean, I was probably better, I probably should have become an astronaut, you know, that was my chances. But anyway, but those 2 books did teach me a lot.
How about you, Laura?
Yes.
I'm a big Dan Brown fan,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I like Lee Jennings. So, and because of Dan Brown, I like to write things that you kind of get to know about historical things in the process. And I tend to write sort of a high action, sort of, you know, people are moving constantly. So I like the fast pace of it.
And when you were a child, what did you like to read?
I read a lot of the Black Stallion books.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you look at reviews for your books, both positive and negative, at sites like Amazon, Goodreads, etc.? Although reviews are for readers, and it's probably not very pleasant to read the negative ones, perhaps you sometimes get good feedback or ideas from readers?
I read them all. I'm kind of, yeah, like every day I actually check Amazon. So I have new reviews, I'll admit it. And for anybody out there, they're really helpful for writers if you write them. And it's really frustrating when you get somebody that says, I loved your book so much, and I'm like, please go on Amazon. And it's only about 1% of people that actually do. But it'll be that one person that really didn't like it. So I do look at them, and I had one negative review that was pretty interesting and made me think. But I had one that was, I wouldn't want to read it, and neither should you. You know, something that's not helpful.
Yeah.
You know,
Was it hurtful?
yeah, it actually kind of was. And then I kind of thought about it. It happened a long time after I published the book, and I thought, you know what? I went a long time without that. It's going to happen. So
Yeah.
it kind of made me feel better that it took as long as it did.
See,
I guess.
people, so if you don't like it, don't leave
Yeah.
a review. Remember what
Do.
Thumper's mother said.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Do, but be specific. You know, if there was something you didn't like, be specific about what it was. Because, like, one person said, well, I don't like your idea of the afterlife. Well, that's okay because it's fiction. So that didn't really hurt my feelings because
Yeah.
I'm not going to have the same opinion as somebody else. So I think as long as you're clear of what you don't like, it's okay.
Okay.
Reviews, huh?
Yeah.
You know, I have a dear writer friend, he writes under Lee Greenwood, and he got a 1 for Dramatic Times, which is the lowest review you could get. And I learned a lot from him because when he went to a conference, he had a t-shirt made that said, I'm #1 with Romantic Times. So I learned a lot from him. I usually don't, when a book comes out, I usually don't bother with the reviews in the beginning. My publisher usually sends me the good ones, and you know, later on when the book's been out a while, then I'll kind of just look to see how many, you know, good, but I don't usually worry too much because there's always going to be someone that doesn't like it and someone that does, so I don't worry about it too much.
Right.
You gotta,
Those are all my questions.
I was wondering, because I've been to these author lunches before, do you have people just normal little conversation come up and give you such a stupendous idea that they've got to put it on you, and how do you get away from them gracefully?
you want to go first?
I work in a hospital with like 1,000 people, and I walk around quite a bit, and I at least once a day somebody says that to me, and it's usually something I don't want to deal with. So I say, you know what? I have this writers group, and you should come and write it and bring it and do it yourself.
Good for you.
That's how you do it.
Well, those aren't the ones that worry me or bother me as much as the ones that said, yeah, I'm going to take a weekend off and write my book. Those are the ones that really bother me.
Any more questions?
I just have one other. Oh. I've always thought to myself, oh my God, I've got such a great imagination. I could write something, right? I would constantly be writing about myself. Do you ever find that you do that your character all of a sudden you realize that, that's me?
I don't think, I think everybody that I know that writes puts a little bit of themselves in some of the characters, although, you know, some of them just come out of nowhere, but there's usually some inspiration from someone, you know, in there. The whole character, not so much, but there's definite aspects of people. And I'm a Botticelli lover, so therefore my character's a Botticelli lover, so it definitely comes through. I don't know by the time you get to 42 books, but...
The wonderful thing about writing about other people, your friends, they don't recognize themselves in print. That's the wonderful thing. You know, I used to pride myself in the fact that I really never wanted to write the same book over and over like some people do, you know. And so I thought, I always do this and always write about different things. And then one day my agent said, it's interesting that all your books are about abandonment. And I thought, abandonment? And then I realized I do have abandonment issues. I felt abandoned when the cat walked out on us. But anyway, so I guess there's a little bit of yourself does come through whether you want to or not.
Do you foresee a movie from any of your books?
Well, I don't know. You know, of course I write mostly historical, so I don't know that there could maybe a Hallmark movie, but they don't make, you don't make much money. They don't give too much money to authors, so I don't know, and they kind of change them a lot. So I don't know. Probably not.
I'm still waiting to be encouraged. I have a brother who's actually a screenwriter, but he's declined to turn any of mine into screenplays.
Good.
Anyone else? Yeah, I have a question. I know in school when I actually have to write things that I always hated taking people's edits and having to change because I knew this was just the right way. So it makes me wonder how many drafts do you have to go through to get it right? So now I need to change anything.
You know what? I still change stuff in my first book, I'll admit. You know, I recorded an audiobook, and then as I'm reading it, I'm going, oh. So that is, again, the one benefit of self-publishing is I can go and just re-upload it again with my little correction. But I think you'll just beat it to death. At some point, you just got to say, it's done, and move on to something else. But I go through it probably 10 times at least when it's done and read it quickly so that I'm getting the whole experience that a reader would get, and make sure that, because you start a thought in the, or I do this anyway, I start a thought in the beginning that I think, oh, I'm going to get back to that later, and then I've gone into something else, so I have to take that out. So, but there's programs that are for editing out there too that I have not used, but there's something called Pro Writer's Aid, which will actually find all your errors for you and offer suggestions, and I know a lot of writers that do that.
Oh yes, the whole revision thing. I usually go through and make it the best I can make it and send it to a friend of mine who reads it. And she'll make comments, you know, this chapter doesn't seem this and whatever. And then I go through it again, and then I send it to my editor. She goes through it again and sends it to me, and I make whatever, if I agree with the changes. I don't always, but if I do, I think, yeah, she's got a good point, and I'll do it. And then it goes through 2 copy editors for spelling and whatever. But you know, the interesting part about when you say changing, I have a publisher who's bringing out some of my backlist on ebooks. And I'm so glad I said, well, let me go through them before. They had been edited and everything. I wrote them a long time ago. And you know, you do get to be a little better writer as you go along. And I'm so glad I did. I can't believe I got away with what I got away with back then. Point of view, what was that? So I went through and redid them all. So yeah, you know, it's always a work in progress, I guess.
More questions?
Well,
Oh,
thank
we got one right
you.
here.
You're going around and doing things like this, you're meeting your public, and people are talking to you as we are now. And it takes a lot of energy and time away from your writing. How much time do you actually spend doing face-to-face with readers versus shut up doing your writing?
I'm really fussy with my writing time. You know, I don't make doctor appointments or anything. People know not to call me before noon. I still get up at 4 o'clock in the morning because I told you that's how I started, and I can't break that dumb habit. So I get a lot of my writing done before everybody else wakes up. And then I do all the business of writing in the afternoon. I don't usually do a lot of speaking unless I have a book out. Like, you know, I've been doing a lot because I have a book out. January just came out. I've got another book coming out in June, and I've got one coming out in November. So that's when my speaking things will take off. But I'm pretty fussy about my writing. It's 5 days a week. I'm at that computer every single day. And even on holidays I'm up there, so that's me. But I only have 6 months to write a book. That's another thing.
For me, I haven't spent this is probably maybe my 6th event that I've done. I find the big time sucker is online, social media, because that's kind of like the age that we're in, that we have to be, on Facebook and Twitter and all these kind of things that I'm just now getting my head wrapped around. But I find that I made it a point to just go on, do a couple things, and turn it off so I can get some writing done.
So you really are involved in the sales of your books simply because you become a persona?
Yeah, absolutely. It's because, it's completely up to me whether or not I sell anything, basically, and how much I get out there and promote.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Laura. Everybody else here at the table. Eager to sell you their books and autograph them for you. And for those of you who have not yet joined the Friends of the Library, if you'd like to, there's still a little bit of time to enter the Kindle drawing by becoming a member. So I invite you to come up and meet our authors.
I'm going to let them introduce themselves because as I've gotten older, I call them all honey because I can't remember names. But I'm going to let them introduce themselves. They're all from Vasquez High School Service Club, and I'm going to let them tell you what year that they're going to be. Well, not what year. All right.
Hello, I'm Brighten, and I'm currently a senior and the president of Service Club.
I'm Lexi Garcia, and I'm a senior and I'm in ASB this year.
I am Pearl Holbert, and I am a junior, and I'm also in ASB this year.
Hi, I'm Kate Fox. I'm a junior, and I'm a member of Service Club.
Hi, I'm Heather Fick, and I'm a member of Service Club. I'm a junior also.
Thank you.
I have to tell you that we have used these students at a number of our events, and they are absolutely great. They are so helpful, and they follow instructions. Even mine, where I'm so rattled and I tell them to do something, and they look at me and go, huh? So thank you very much, and be generous in your tip envelopes, please.
Thank you all for coming. We can do a Kindle drawing now. Is anybody, any last minute entries? Is Dee Fernandez. Congratulations, Dee.
Thank you.
I actually have the boxes. I got it.